Welcome to Beer Stories for Private Equity. Join us for our weekly happy hour, tapping into 27 years of PE experience, one pint at a time. Beer Stories for Private Equity is powered by MonogramGroup. On today's show, we're excited to be joined by MJ, MaryJeanne Scott from JM Search. And for MonogramGroup, here's your host, Scott Markman.
Please fasten your seatbelts.
Okay, so welcome, MJ. I have to get that right. It's officially MaryJeanne, but MJ to your friends and family. So
Correct.
Welcome, MJ, to the podcast. I want to start with your background. You've had an unbelievably interesting background and lots of relevant experience in the search, universe. Yep. Some of the clients you've served include Holly Hunt and Knoll and Lifetime Fitness and Room and Board and some incredible brands. So how did you get started in this industry? Because people don't go to college to major in search.
No.
Lots of unbelievably smart and talented people end up in search, but how did you migrate here?
So I didn't start in search. I went to school and I worked in retail and merchandising from the beginning of my career. From the time I could walk into a mall, I sort of always knew that whatever I did was going to be in and around consumer products, fashion, home, whatever it was. That was from the get-go kind of my thing. So I started my career in retail and with my dream job being to become a buyer. So I became a buyer very early on. I actually didn't finish school. I got swooped up and I got into a buyer training program. And I went to work for a company that trained me on how to buy merchandise and the art and science of merchandising. And I ran, within a very short period of time, I was running a big business out in Los Angeles for a retailer there.
Wow.
And that was that was my first career.
So you mentioned, college, and you're from New York. And in my production notes, I see that you went to FIT, which is one of the great design-related programs.
Yeah.
So what about sort of what you learned at FIT kind of was relevant to going into merchandising and buying, but then applying that into your current situation?
Yeah, no, sort of everything. It was what I wanted to study. It was what I wanted to do more than I didn't want to study it. I actually just wanted to do it, but I had to find a path to get there. So that's the honest truth. You sort of learn the business side of things. It's not practical yet because you're not doing it, but you're learning. And I think the surprising thing for me was how right and left brain it was. There's a highly analytical, highly mathematical, highly scientific side of it. And then there's the piece that people think about, which is trend, and you're going to go shop in Paris and you're going to go to the great fashion shows and you're going to do all this stuff, but it's only half of it. And the other half is the business side of it. And I realized that I was really good at that split down the middle. Like, I don't want to take the creative piece out of anything I'm ever doing, but I don't want to just be creative. I love the data and the goals and objectives of building a business too. And so that was just a really good fit overall. When I found my way into search, which was like totally by accident and not intentional, as with most search people, I realized it was a very good use of those almost the same exact thing. The business side, the analytics side, really building a business, which was always part of my job in search, wasn't just to do search, but it was to also build a business and lead people and grow and all that. But where I used to curate an assortment of products for people to buy, thinking about what they asked for, what the data told me, what the criteria was, who they were, and what the fit was going to be for them, it became really clear when I was conducting my first search ever that it was a version of what I was doing before, just without the stuff. And so using my intuition as alongside of the criteria and the data and the information that my clients needed me to solve for, but my own kind of way of knowing there was going to be a fit between the people, that critical piece, was really critical. And that was what I wound up figuring out, like that was the good use of my intuition. And I really learned that very early on, and kind of made that kind of assessment that this is really good for me. It's a good use.
One of the things I love about what you just said is that right brain, left brain kind of not split, but kind of need for both sides. I have a BFA in design from Washington, St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
And beyond, I call it the hardcore skills of being a designer, I was taught how to think and problem solve
Yes.
and how to apply information, how to find information, how to process it, and how to inform what I think a solution ought to
Yeah.
be, and then layer in the creative aspect of things. And so I think there's a kind of a parallel there
There
for
is.
sure.
There's a huge
I
parallel.
don't want to get too far into this before we get into the traditional crowning consideration. This episode is not sponsored, but brought to you by Lagunitas IPA, a fine California company with a huge presence in Chicago, our hometown. And MaryJeanne, MJ, is repping Mountain Valley Spring Water. Is that
Spring
correct?
water. Yes. Spring water.
All
Yes.
right. So MJ said to me as we were starting the podcast that she's on the clock, and so she has to drink water. And I said, "So am I, and I'm drinking beer." Anyway, so I need to pour this so I can try it and get into the agency swaggy logo wear.
Very nice. Very
As
nice.
I always do. Okay, let's now segue into the hardcore information. What are some of the broad trends in search, A, and then B, those broad trends applied into the private equity concentration that your firm kind of has enjoyed for a long time?
Close to 80% or more of our search work is with private equity firms and their portfolio companies. The trends that I've seen this last year, I think particularly with our private equity clients, and particularly in the consumer industry, which is what I focus on, leaders, whether it's a CFO or a CEO or head of operations or whatever the role is, that really are growth oriented, that have scaled a business, or in their functional area they've been very entrepreneurial and roll up their sleeves. They've been a party of one that has grown into a party of 20. They don't necessarily, they may have big company best practices in their background, but they've gone on to something entrepreneurial and have applied it there and have learned that that's what they love most of all. And so that is a very typical profile of almost any functional area that we might be doing a search in. Today, that still all holds true. And because we do focus on more middle market size businesses that are probably in their first round of professional investor relationship, first round funding, and they do need professionalization. They do need to get ready to scale, but they also need to be scaling at the same time. So everything's kind of going on at the same time. Today in our searches, I'm hearing and feeling from our clients this need for all of those things that we've always looked for, that we're consistently looking for, but also someone who perhaps has gone through maybe a challenging economic time, right? Someone who this is not the first time that they've maybe seen some sort of a headwind or a downturn. We've had an amazing run for the last 15, 10 years or more, and a lot of leaders haven't really experienced any sort of whatever happened in 2008 or 2001 and 2. Those are experiences that some of us have seen and gone through, as well as other leaders have gone through that in their own businesses. And we're now starting to talk about the importance for someone to understand how to get a team through that, understand what it takes to get through some of those things, but not leave behind the commercialization and growth and the focus on growth. Because when these private equity firms buy these businesses, they're looking to grow them, but a little more focus on the leadership piece. Being able to wrap your arms around, being able to assess talent more quickly and make change if they need to, and having had experience doing that, but also managing to the cash flow, maybe managing through, I'm not going to say a turnaround because it's not that, but it might be a little bit of a bump in the road before they get to 6 months from now. This is short term, but it's really needing kind of that two heads on one person kind of thing.
So along these lines, um, we have done a ton of work with portfolio companies and have
Mhm.
worked with, I'll call it professional CEOs or C-suite folks that are brought in to do a job. When you were uh, developing a list of candidates, do you sort of segment them into corporate folks who are coming into private equity for the first time versus those who've been around the block a few times on this stuff and are a little bit professional, hired gun, let's say C-suite, and that's a part of what the management, the ownership of the company or the PE firm is evaluating and evaluating it when choosing candidates because they're different worlds.
100%, and they are different worlds. And um, again, I think the critical nature of what we do with the size of companies that we're working with, many of which, have been founder led up until very recently or still are. And so that kind of dynamic and that culture fit is even more critical. Um, big there's a place for amazing people that have come up through big companies and have built and have best in class experience that is critical and is necessary. That said, if there's never been a real entrepreneurial experience in their background, um, that's a real challenge most of the time. And I say this a lot. My team is gonna, like, when they listen to this, they're gonna be like, again, but it's true. Like, I have been doing this over 20 years, and everybody thinks they're entrepreneurial. Everybody does. Um, and everybody thinks they roll up their sleeves and are not high maintenance and are hands on. And the degree of which they've done it is the telling to me, like past behavior is an indicator of future behavior. If somebody's never done that, it's a risk that I think a lot of our clients can't take. The making that kind of a mistake early on in an investment is just, it changes everything that goes on from that moment on if it doesn't work. And so getting as close as we can to someone with a proven track record of like experience is usually what we are hoping for. There are times when someone just is exceptional, and there are things, they may have worked for a multi-billion-dollar company their whole life, but there was something about the work that they did and maybe the division that they were in or some experience that they had, that I can think of candidates that are popping into my mind right now that I probably got on the phone and said, oh, they've spent 20 years at 20 bazillion dollar whatever. Maybe not, but they had a story that wasn't clear on their resume or wasn't as clear on their LinkedIn page or whatever. And that story, that nugget, is like what tells you this is not just somebody who thinks they're on. This is somebody who actually exhibited those skills. That's how they work.
Right.
That's their favorite experience they've ever had, which tells me that they're not going to get scared and like freak out when they find out that they have to make the coffee and take out the garbage and write the strategic plan and put it into the private equity
Yeah, that's me. That's me
and
right
go
there.
to
That's right
Walmart
there.
and all that, right? Like they're
Yeah.
not going to get scared. They're going to like it.
I want to ask a follow-on question to what you just said. Along the lines of, I'll call it big public, maybe company experience versus, privately owned entrepreneurial experience. How important are factors such as direct, relevant industry experience? Because we get this all the time with private equity folks. Hey, we want to bring you into a portfolio company, and they make pink triangular widgets. Do you have brand experience in pink triangular widgets? And you kind
Yeah.
of go, no, and nobody does, but I've done all this other stuff that's relevant
Right.
here. The
Right.
second question is an issue of scale, meaning, if we think about EBITDA scales, 5 to 25, 25 to 100, 100 to 300, how important is that the relevance of the scale of things, even in the world of private
Very.
entrepreneurial companies?
Yeah, I would say very. Very. So I'll go back to your first part of your question with the pink widgets, and I think being, when you work with a trusted search partner and an advisor, somebody that you trust, and there's there's conversation around like the best person, and it could be the person who's sold the purple widget, and, not the pink widget, and they're almost close, but they've never done it. They've never done that exact product. I think it's less important. I think the things that are the most important are the person's ability and success rate of building a business in whatever functional area, with a CEO, CFO, whatever. That experience, the win, the very clear, line of sight to value creation is critical.
Yep.
I think more important than did they make white T-shirts, right, is not as important as were they, whatever the mandates are. Product innovation, have they been innovative building out new product categories? Sales channel development, do they sell into and know how to get into where you want to go to, right? Those are really big questions.
Yeah.
Are they leaders? Do people follow them? Are they magnanimous types of people that have a following? Is that really important to you? I think there's other things besides the pink widget, that makes it
Or
really critical.
potentially, M&A experience and integration,
Including
because
that.
it's part of 90% of the deals. There's
Yes.
some meaningful M&A
That's right.
work, right?
That's right.
And that's why these folks bring in a CFO on sort of day 2, because you got to have the financial sophistication to lay the groundwork for that, because it's going to
100%.
happen.
Right. And that integration piece has become more and more critical. I think that during, we're having an incredible year. I mean, we are, our clients are, we're here, we're busy, but it's been more challenging, right? In terms of, just businesses in general. I think they're going to be held on to a little longer than they probably were intended, and things like that. But, it's a good time in a way, because I see our clients, not just thinking about growth, but really taking the time to think about getting more operationally effective. So to your point, like the M&A, the integrations, maybe they didn't really happen as well as they should have. And it was masked by like this crazy amount of business. Wasn't noticeable until things slowed down a little bit, and then you can see everything. So taking that time to really integrate those businesses the way they needed to be, instead of maybe, not doing it until they absolutely had to.
Okay. Along the lines of the things that you've been describing in the last 5 minutes or so, is there something you can point to about sort of the JMSR's way of doing things that is, meaningfully unique, different, better than a lot of excellent peers that you have in the world,
Yeah.
that you can quickly kind of characterize?
Yeah. I do firmly believe that because we do focus so much in the size and scale and the private equity nature of the businesses that we serve, having done publicly traded companies, having done big private companies, having done this, I can tell you that there is a way in which we interview candidates, select people for our clients, assess their entrepreneurial nature, not just because they said so, assess all of that. That is because it's such a focus. It's not 10% or 20% of what we do. It's 80% of what we do or more, right? We know what that looks like and feels like all day, every day. The other piece that recently, I've been at JM for almost 5 years, but it really recently crystallized for me as we are growing too. And we are those people. So I mean that in such a a way that I can almost it's emotional in a way. Like, we are those people. We recognize those candidates because we see ourselves in them too. Like, we love growth. We are very passionate about being entrepreneurial and thinking outside the box, and not just doing it the same way everybody does it every day, all day, we are always open to new ideas and new things. You've seen that with us, right? It's truly part of the DNA, and I appreciate it. Maybe because I am a newer senior person here than most, I see it, and it does inform how we interview and the kind of people we pick, the questions we ask them. I notice that here. So it truly is part of us, and I think that does it makes it.
What I found about your firm that was very identifiable and I think valuable was the tangible collegiality of leadership.
Yeah.
And how it informs everything. It's not bullshit.
No.
It starts with John Marshall,
Right.
on down. And from the moment you walk in, it's
You feel it.
really on the table,
Yeah,
and
no question.
there's no airs being put on at all.
Not at all. I often tell the story to people that we're recruiting, whether it's from my team or anybody else. I wasn't looking to come to JM Search. Wasn't looking to not. To, I was in my own business for 17 years. I had no interest in going inside a search firm ever, as long as I lived. That was never part of my equation. But somehow, someone convinced me to come and spend a day here, and I did a day and a half, and hadn't interviewed anywhere in 20 since I was 28, and I was 50. Um, and as I was walking out the door, and one of our founding partners was walking me out the door, Bob Sargent, who I know you've met, and he said, MJ, he's like, people have been coming up to us, John and I, and like they think you'd be a great fit, and they like you so much, and you just seem like you've had a great time, great day here. What do you think? It was a Friday afternoon, and I was I was spinning. My head was spinning with the day I had had, and I said, I wish I was coming back here on Monday morning. And I mean it. Like I did. I meant it. God, like I'm like, these are like amazing people, and they're so normal, and yet not, and like not what you see in another search firm. And there is a camaraderie here that I just wanted to. I really was hoping that they would let me in, because it was a great opportunity for sure, but also a place that I knew I could get better.
Okay, so let's build on that for a second. If you're sitting down and having a beer with, a Villanova graduate who's going to be embarking on a career and has maybe even heard about search, thinking about search, what are the one or two things you would say? Think about this and this as you're getting ready to embark on this career, lessons learned, prioritize this.
I thought about this a little bit. I think the best advice I could ever give someone, and whether they should listen to it or not, I don't know. But I think this is a business of if you really think about what we do every day, the impact it has on businesses and people is significant. It's tremendous. Um, it's sobering when you think about it. So I think knowing who you are, getting to know yourself well. I would encourage my own child. I encourage, get to know yourself well. Go do lots of testing. Figure out where your strengths are. Really know like what you're really good at innately. What do you really love? Because you really need to love this. You need to really love it, because it's not an easy job that we do, and it's not a 9 to 5, and it's not a Monday through Friday, and it's not every 6 weeks of vacation a year. You are in it every day, and it doesn't stop. If you're lucky, it doesn't stop. So I would say that getting to know yourself really well, and knowing what you're really good at, and getting people to really tell you what they love about it, but what they don't. What are the things that they wish were different? What are the hardest days they've ever had?
So my equivalent answer to yours, which is awesome, is number one, find a mentor, and the parallel to that is find people, either by accident or on purpose, whose managerial style you don't like. Because when you're in that position, you're going to have a model to follow,
Right.
right?
Right.
I was fortunate to have that, some folks that I admired and emulated, and some folks who candidly stunk
Right. But
and
they sometimes
were
are the best
and were
teacher for
and
you.
we're absolutely, and we're jerks. The
Right.
second thing I would say is, a few weeks ago I turned 64. I'm
You look great.
Paul McCartney's age, right? 64. And what I learned is I love what the hell I'm doing today more than I did 10 years ago. And the fact that I'm fired up to, do the kind of work that we did together as much today as I was a long time ago is what a gift. Give
Yes,
yourself
it
a
is a
gift at
gift.
21 for 64.
Absolutely. It's a long haul, right? And there's going to be lots of days where you wonder, and you wonder if you're good at it. You wonder if you have the best day you've ever had. But in this is a lifestyle. This work that we're in, it truly is, and you have to love the hunt. You have to be willing to say no. You have to You have to know when someone's not right and say, you know what, this isn't right. We need to keep looking. You need to get real. You need to be very self-aware, I think, in this business.
MJ, thank you so much.
This was fun.
Awesome.
Yes.
Really appreciate your time. It was wonderful to have you as a guest and to learn your perspectives to share with our listeners.
From all of us at MonogramGroup, thanks for tuning in to Beer Stories for Private Equity,
Episode 6.
Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and you'll be notified as we release new episodes. Please check out the show notes in the description from today's episode. Our email is podcast@monogramgroup.com. Feel free to email us with any comments or questions, and we'll try to answer them in our next episode.